It is time to get started. And today we're playing with a paraliminal that was never in the general population of paraliminals. It was only accessible if you owned a course I created called Euphoria. Now, the design of the course was not just me telling you how to get into more euphoric states. What I did is I reached out to several of the most powerful teachers we knew at the time, and I asked them a question. Based on the work you do in human development, how would you help someone realize a state of euphoria? And it was very interesting to me because 100% of those teachers said, first thing out of their mouths, well, euphoria is our natural state. And then every one of them had a different approach that would help someone who isn't experiencing euphoria as a natural state to gain access to that. I used paraliminal technology, and the recordings and the program is really quite powerful. So if you don't own it, I would encourage you to get it. And the Euphoria Paraliminal is now available as a separate item in the shopping cart of learning strategies. So I'm going to speak to you about the unique protocol that's used in the creation of the Euphoria Paraliminal. It's a protocol that I first developed in a program called Natural Brilliance. And it's an interesting concept because think of a positive thinking recording that gives you negative statements. It doesn't make any sense at all. But let me explain. What happens is when we are not in the ideal state that we would like to be, and if we listened to what the voices in our head are saying, we would hear a lot of things like, this is really hard. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to accomplish what I want. And all those other voices are busily going on in our head while we're saying, this is the goal that I want. So what I did is I created a recording with 3 tracks, voice in the left ear, voice in the right ear, and a voice in the middle. And what happens is one voice goes from negative to neutral. Another goes from absolute positive to neutral. And another one takes a journey from neutral to positive. So it's an interesting concept as these voices are all going. It's a cacophony of voices, and there's a drum beat. And what that drum beat is designed to do is to work with the reptilian complex, the oldest part of the brain, which is rhythmic. And as you are listening to all these voices going on, there's a lot of apparent chaos. And that chaos comes to a resolution. That part of the paraliminal is what I call the fugue state, where there's all these voices kind of wrapping in and going around each other, and it sounds quite wild at first, and then it stops. It's absolute quiet. And in that silence, 2 voices begin to gently guide you to that state, which is your natural state. And that's essentially modeling what you can do for yourself if at any time during the day or even at night, if you're waking up at night going, I can't seem to get back to sleep. I'm not going to be able to be rested in the morning. Any of those kinds of voices. You can stop and you can bring yourself into a more calm, focused, relaxed state. Because what we're going for is physically relaxed, emotionally calm, and mentally clear. When you're in that as a natural state, you're able to go with the flow of whatever it is that's showing up for you at the moment. You don't have to have any unnecessary judgments about what's happening. One of the key concepts that is discussed at the very front part of the paraliminal is this idea of what it means for you as a human being coming into the world. You see, who you are is more than your physical body, more than the emotions and feelings you feel, and more than the thoughts you think, or even your mind. Who you are is a consciousness that comes in at some point in the development of that fetus within your mother, and then continues on after the last breath you breathe in this life. There's something called the Continuum Project, which really looked at all the stories, all of the firsthand reports of people who left and came back. All the work that I have done throughout my life has also been very informative, working with spiritual masters to understand the continuum of life. And in this circle of life, there's a tremendous amount of spiritual wisdom that you come. We're here having a human experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, not merely human trying to become more spiritual. Who we are is naturally gifted with all kinds of powers, and talents, and abilities. And when we can access all of that, we know that there's nothing of this world that can harm us. So that consciousness, which is recognized by all the ancient wisdom traditions, is that you are ever free, ever pure, ever wise. And in that freedom, purity, and wisdom, your natural state, like I talked about in an earlier paraliminal called the 5-element healing, it's all filled with happiness and joy and peace and contentment and gratefulness. And the Euphoria paraliminal is really emphasizing that. So you can always be in a state where you're accessing the full measure of your resources as a mature human being and go with the flow of whatever is unfolding in your life. We can't always control the wave that's coming in to crash on top of us. However, we can hop on our surfboard so that as that wave comes in, we can develop our momentum to follow the energy that's unfolding. And in fact, use the potential energy of that wave to turn it into kinetic energy that will get us where we want to go. So the concept of the paraliminal in its design is also bringing us to this place that you recognize that who you are is unconditionally loved by a universe that brought you here for the purpose of you contributing your gifts and talents to the world. You see, there is a design to the evolution of this universe. There aren't any mistakes. So you're here by design. And it's essential in our lifetime that we connect with that greater purpose that's ours to do, our contribution to make. There's a book by Thomas Berry and Brian Swim called The Universe Story, and it helps us to orient or understand the greater cosmology. Humanity has reached a place of evolutionary development where we're now starting to open up the prefrontal cortex. Imagine an 80-story high-rise that you live in. And when we're using our old brain centers, we're only living in about 20%, 20 of those stories. We're wired for all 80 stories. And it's a matter of using contemplative processes like paraliminal technology to help us open up and gain access to what researchers have discovered resides in that prefrontal cortex of our brain. Think about the reptilian complex, the mammalian complex, the neocortex as the brain evolution. It's a series of evolutionary movements. And that final movement is up to here, where researchers have identified the place where we have our spiritual experience, which is lighting up that wisdom that's in that prefrontal part of our brain. It gives us mind sight, lets us see the big picture. Researchers have called it SQ, not IQ, not EQ, but SQ, spiritual intelligence quotient. And that's what's awakening for humanity. And hey, just in time, right? Because we got a lot of problems that need to be solved. It's essential that you live into the full contribution of what you're here to bring. So this paraliminal euphoria is going to help you live into that greater flow of power and potential that is within you. And it's our time to make a difference in the world. So thank you for all that you do and all that you're willing to step up to. So once again, if at any point you're not in a state that's euphoric, you have an opportunity to step into that greater power and potential that is your natural state. It's as near as your own breath. It's closer than your own heartbeat. It's always right here for you to open up and experience. And with that, I'll say adios for now. Pleasure being with you. And we'll see you in the next session, I hope. Thanks for being here. Peace and blessings.